Breaking! Europe on edge. Putin pushes, borders crack. Emergency rumors, Tomahawk stock, mega missiles moving. Is this the turn? Britain strikes the board. London's arsenal shifts the game. Hundreds of powerful munitions pour in. Sea war rewritten. Naval drones rule the Black Sea. The front is blazing. Armor rolls, enemy collapses, casualties skyrocket. History is being rewritten in real time. Don't miss a full explosive breakdown in our special edition of Hotspot. Emergency! Tomahawks on Moscow. Trump drops the unexpected. Mega missiles already headed for Kyiv. This isn't a threat, it's a real bomb in Ukrainian hands. When and where will they strike? What is Putin afraid of? Watch the sensational details right now.
I seem to have already made a decision regarding Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine.
2 phone conversations in one day between Zelensky and Trump.
And of course, this gives us signals and hope that with the same pressure Trump applied in the Middle East for the sake of peace, he will be able to put similar pressure on Putin to stop the war in Ukraine. I sincerely hope for this and have already discussed it with the president.
As a result, Trump threatened the Kremlin with supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine.
I can say to Putin, listen, if this war is not resolved, I will send them Tomahawks. I can say that. The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, very offensive. And frankly, Russia doesn't need this. They don't need it. I can say this to him. If the war is not resolved, we can do it.
Nevertheless, the US president did not specify whether an official decision has been made to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. So what could this mean? Is Trump simply trying to intimidate Russia, or is he issuing a warning?
That is possible. First of all, because today we learned that the United States is helping Ukraine select targets for strikes. This means that it's not just verbal pressure on Putin to enter peace talks, but actual actions are being taken. Therefore, I do not rule out at all that Trump could actually deliver Tomahawks. That's the kind of person he is. He really could do it.
Trump is probably waiting for the Kremlin to finally decide to make some concessions. But will he be waiting in vain?
The topic of Tomahawks is of great concern to us. President Putin has already spoken about this. This weapon is special. It can be either non-nuclear or nuclear. It has a long range. It's a serious weapon, but at the same time, it can't change the situation on the front lines.
And while the topic of Tomahawks is causing some anxiety in the Kremlin, Lukashenko has already sorted everything out. Well, of course, those missiles aren't going to be flying toward his country.
I think we need to calm down about this. I've already said before, maybe even to you, that our friend Donald has a certain tactic when it comes to dealing with the most pressing issues.
Wow, he's even cozying up to Trump, calling him a friend. So who is closer to the potato magnate? Is it still Putin, or is it now his friend Donald?
Lukashenko wants to reclaim that position for himself. Like, I can do this, I can even host negotiations, and I can talk to anyone, to this one and that one. Basically, he's trying to show off that he's the top negotiator, that he can bring everyone together. I think that's what this is all about.
But the question remains, will the Kremlin's rhetoric change after Trump's statements?
The Russian side continues to say that they are ready for a peaceful settlement. And we also hear that Trump keeps talking about the need to sit down at the negotiating table. And from this, we conclude that he still maintains the political will. But the Europeans, the Kyiv regime, are showing a complete unwillingness to do anything in this direction.
It couldn't have been any other way. Of course, the Kremlin will blame everyone around except itself.
One precise strike on Novo Ogaryovo and everything will change. World politics will change. That's why I, like all of Ukraine, can't wait for those very Tomahawks.
And the Kremlin's main character, Medvedev, is even threatening Trump, stating that the transfer of missiles could end badly for everyone, including the President of the United States.
Putin's main task, the one he assigns to Medvedev, is precisely to threaten everyone and keep watch, so that if anything happens, he can say, well, he's just my deputy. Yes, he says. What did you expect? So Medvedev is simply carrying out the tasks assigned to him by Putin, not by anyone else. So, yes, we need to understand that when he says this, it matches the message of what Peskov is saying.
Nevertheless, the Russian media hesitated. It seems they're worried. Well, of course, unlike Putin, they have nowhere to hide.
They're not even trying to hide it, moreover. They've already counted the number of targets. They're already marking on the map the sites that could be hit by those very Tomahawks. Take a look. Russian military infrastructure targets within the range of Tomahawk cruise missiles in the Russian Federation.
Putin will take care of everything. And what have you forgotten? You have air defense systems with no equal.
Our response is to strengthen the air defense system of the Russian Federation.
Also, besides the Tomahawks, Trump stated that he has actually ended the war in Gaza, which is confirmed by his presence in the Israeli parliament. Well, that's another resolved conflict to Trump's personal account. Maybe next year he'll get lucky with the Nobel Prize.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Checkmate, Putin. Britain just flipped the script. London has pelted Ukraine with hundreds of powerful munitions and the Kremlin is panicking. These weapons can wipe out Russian planes and drones, and this is only the opening move. London preparing a knockout blow at the Russian army. What else is heading to Ukraine, and why is Moscow already squealing in fear? Watch the shocking details next.
The United Kingdom is strengthening Ukraine's skies. Hundreds of missiles for air defense systems were delivered 5 months ahead of schedule. This was reported on the British government's website during the visit to Kyiv by the Minister for Defense Readiness and Industry, Luke Pollard.
The development of industrial partnerships is important so that we can learn from their experience and together build the industrial base necessary to defend the United Kingdom, deter our adversaries, and support Ukraine.
We are talking about light multi-role missiles, LMM, which are produced as part of the British military support program for Ukraine. This is a high-precision missile measuring 1.3 meters in length, weighing only 13 kilograms, and with a range of up to 8 kilometers. It is equipped with a laser infrared guidance system, and its 3-kilogram fragmentation warhead with a proximity fuse makes it effective against both aerial and ground targets. The missiles can be launched from various platforms, including ground-based launchers such as Manpads, the Stormer SAM system, HVM or Rapid Ranger, as well as from helicopters and ships.
As illegal Russian aggression continues to intensify, European countries must unite and strengthen their support. Ongoing and sustained industrial cooperation, both with our dedicated government colleagues and our vital international allies, remains the only truly effective way to ensure a safe, secure, and prosperous future for the resilient people of Ukraine.
British support is not limited to supplies. At the same time, a new major phase of industrial cooperation has been announced. The package of £1.6 billion, approximately $2 billion, is intended for integrating LMM missiles into Ukraine's air defense and expanding joint production capabilities. According to Luke Pollard, the total volume of UK military aid in 2025 will reach £4.5 billion, or $5.6 billion. A record figure for London for all time. And now another key element of cooperation. The United Kingdom and Ukraine are launching joint production of interceptor drones. The project could start in the coming months. We're talking about a production line capable of turning out around 2,000 interceptors per month. Such production rates are exactly what's needed to counter massive swarms of Shahed drones and other large-scale attacks by combat UAVs. The first production lines will be set up in the United Kingdom, but the project structure is designed to be flexible, so it can quickly respond to the needs of the front and relocate capacity closer to Ukraine if necessary. The British side promises to contribute development, research expertise, and modern manufacturing technologies that Ukrainian factories currently lack. This is not just a supply contract, it's an attempt to create sovereign capabilities for Ukraine. Equipment, technical support, training, and joint research and development chains. At the same time as the UK, the Netherlands also discussed a memorandum on joint drone production. European partners are building industrial cooperation that is meant to function not as a one-time delivery, but as a series of production lines, services, and training.
In other words, while we have long since successfully matched the impressive quality of drones with the so-called Russian, actually Iranian-Chinese, Shaheds, the truly significant and pressing question was, can we effectively scale up our own production capabilities in the same remarkable way that Iran and China have so successfully done for Russia? Well, it turns out we could. So, when it comes to long-range drones, we're now close to parity not only in terms of the quality of the machines, but also in their quantity, which is extremely important in this case. After all, this isn't the kind of war you can win with pinpoint strikes alone. Here, the sheer volume of strikes is what really matters. It's necessary, well, when we're talking about figures like a 20% reduction in all of Russia's oil refining industry. That's when you need operations on this kind of scale. And now we finally reached that scale.
Other allies of Ukraine are also preparing new support measures. The United States plans to continue supplying advanced weaponry, including air defense systems, artillery and cruise missiles, as well as strengthening Ukraine's defense infrastructure. According to preliminary plans, in 2025 to 2026, the volume of military aid could amount to several $billion. Among the European countries, Germany and France are preparing to supply armored vehicles and ammunition, as well as expanding the training of Ukrainian soldiers at their training centers. Poland and the Baltic states are considering the possibility of providing additional types of weapons and equipment, as well as conducting joint exercises to enhance the combat readiness of Ukrainian troops. In addition, the allies are developing plans for the long-term integration of new air defense systems and artillery complexes so that Ukraine can build a resilient defense network and prepare for possible escalation from the Russian Federation. As part of humanitarian support, there are plans to expand programs for infrastructure restoration, medical assistance, and the training of specialists to work in crisis conditions.
Putin's appetite is growing by the minute. Green men have been spotted on the Estonia border. The Russian army is moving into the so-called Phase Zero. Tallinn didn't waste a moment, reacted immediately. The Kremlin is trotting out a familiar narrative. So what is Putin really preparing in the Baltics? The latest on this in the report ahead.
Putin's little green men are already at Estonia's doorstep. It looks like the bunker dweller is preparing a Crimea 2.0 operation in Europe. Western media are publishing footage in which you can see armed men on the road. Judging by their uniforms, it's clear these are definitely not Russian border guards. Due to this sudden activation of unidentified Russian troops in the areas of checkpoints between Russia and Estonia, the police department has urgently closed the country's eastern borders. We decided to close the road to prevent possible provocations and incidents. Our main goal is the safety of the Estonian population. Kunta Pidosk, operational head of the Southern Prefecture. The safety of our own population is the top priority for all Baltic countries. For example, today Latvia is expelling at least 841 Russian citizens from the country. These are Russians who were unable to prove even a basic knowledge of the Latvian language. The EU country no longer wants to see the Kremlin's fifth column on its territory.
The stay of such Russians in Latvia will be considered illegal, and their access to social services will be closed. If these Russians remain, they will face deportation. Madara Puke, representative of the Latvian Office of Citizenship and Migration Affairs.
Due to the possible Russian attack on NATO, the alliance is preparing to evacuate 1.2 million people. According to the authorities of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, this is the number of citizens who would need to flee from war in the event of aggression from the Kremlin. This concerns at least a 40-kilometer strip along the borders with Russia and Belarus. For Lithuania, this would mean a total evacuation. In this case, even the capital would fall into the potential frontline zone. However, in Vilnius, they are confident that such a scenario is unlikely.
An emergency of such scale, which would require evacuating Vilnius entirely, is unlikely to develop in just one day. That is, it may well be necessary to start with some localized evacuations of the eastern outskirts of the city or even individual neighborhoods. But we proceed from the assumption that ultimately our resources must be prepared for the evacuation of all 600,000 residents of Vilnius.
Meanwhile, in Estonia, which has closed its borders, local churches, schools, universities and sports arenas are already actively preparing to receive internally displaced persons. Special transportation, trains and buses are being allocated for this purpose. Residents are being assigned to potential evacuation points and given maps and information about the evacuation routes. Europeans themselves are stocking up on provisions, first aid kits, and packing emergency bags in case they need to flee suddenly.
People have been talking about this for a long time. For the past several weeks, even months. At work, everywhere. We'll see how things turn out. For now, we need to take care of the most urgent things.
In total, the population of the Baltic countries exceeds 6 million people. Of these, almost 2.9 million live in Lithuania, nearly 2 million in Latvia, and 1.4 million people in Estonia. In Vilnius, evacuation plans are being prepared for about a quarter of the population, in Latvia for a third, and in Estonia for 10%. And that's taking into account the most optimistic forecasts. According to military analysts, if Putin launches a full-scale offensive against the Baltic countries, every single resident there could become a displaced person.
They have platforms for various types of missile weaponry, which can strike in the shortest possible time. As one of our sources told us, these systems can literally be rolled out of garages, for example, at the Luga military base, 100 kilometers from the Estonian border, loaded with Iskander missiles in 5 minutes, and launched in quantities that would cover the entire territory of Estonia and most of Latvia.
Meanwhile, Russian propaganda is foaming at the mouth, insisting that the Kremlin's intentions are purely peaceful and that the Baltic countries supposedly have nothing to fear. Even the bunker dweller himself, putting on an innocent face, tries to reassure the West.
We ourselves have never initiated military confrontation. It is pointless, unnecessary, simply not needed, and simply absurd. They can't possibly believe this. They can't possibly believe what they're saying, that Russia is planning to attack NATO. Because it's impossible to believe such nonsense.
In much the same way, right before February 2022, Moscow was insisting that they had no intention of invading Ukraine. Earlier in 2014, Putin also denied the involvement of Russian army soldiers in the annexation of Crimea. So it's no surprise, as soon as the little green men appeared, the Baltic countries began preparing for the worst.
The nature of hybrid warfare is such that you might not realize, is this already a war, a single attack, or just an accident? Take, for example, the damaged communication cables in the Baltic Sea or the plane that recently crashed in Lithuania. An attack or an accident? Not to mention the constant problems with GPS signals in the area of the Suwałki corridor.
And adding fuel to the fire at NATO's border is Putin's loyal friend, Alexander Lukashenko. The latter has resorted to yet another dirty provocation. He suddenly put the Belarusian troops on alert. The country's Ministry of Defense cheerfully reported that units are already moving out to designated areas to carry out the tasks assigned by the leader.
The armed forces units, which are involved in the crucial combat readiness check, are currently moving to their specifically assigned operational areas.
However, analysts insist that all of this is more for show than actual preparation for a real invasion. Belarus will continue to constantly escalate the situation and threaten with combat readiness checks. As for the Russian army, it is so bogged down in the war in Ukraine that the Kremlin simply doesn't have the resources to open a second front. Nevertheless, everything could change quickly.
Recruiting new soldiers takes quite a long time. But in principle, this is probably a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. Because there are enough combat-ready units at the front in Ukraine, so all that's needed is to simply transfer them. That wouldn't take much time, and then arm them somehow, reorganize them.
Among experts, there is an opinion that Russia is already preparing for war with NATO and could strike earlier than intelligence agencies expect. For example, the American Institute for the Study of War claims that Moscow has entered the so-called Phase Zero in preparing for a confrontation with the alliance. Russia is creating reserves and developing new tactics for waging war without the mass use of armored vehicles, and is capable of launching new aggression without waiting for the full restoration of its army after the war with Ukraine. Whether Putin will lose his nerve or actually attack the Baltic countries, we will find out very soon.
Sea war rewritten by Ukraine. Western media are raving about Kyiv's unmanned sea hunters. In just 3.5 years, this fast, low-signature, hard-to-hit naval drones have seized the Black Sea battle space, driving Russia's fleet out of Sevastopol and pinning the rest near Novorossiysk. What's the secret sauce and what comes next? The winds and the future of Ukraine's sea drones in the video ahead.
The days of the Russian Black Sea Fleet are numbered. There is less and less time left until the occupiers are completely defeated. This week, Ukraine marks the 3rd anniversary of the first strike on the Crimean Bridge. On October 8, 2022, a powerful explosion rocked the crossing, seriously damaging both the road surface and the railway line. At that time, Ukraine saw the emergence of an entirely new and unique branch of the military and its own advanced type of weapon, naval drones. As a result of the incident, automobile traffic on the Crimean Bridge was halted. It was then that the whole world learned what Ukrainian naval drones are capable of.
Ukraine demonstrated that its naval drones, here they are, there's probably a picture of what they look like. These naval drones are an effective weapon.
Over the past 3 years, Ukrainian naval UAVs have become the masters of the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Putin's much-vaunted Black Sea fleet has been forced to hide from our drones in remote ports.
This is essentially a kind of army of the future. This is the element that will help save human lives, that will allow us to operate more efficiently.
The effectiveness of modern Ukrainian naval weaponry is hard to dispute. Time and again, it manages to break through enemy defenses and make its way into Russian ports and bays.
Drones both in the air and on the ground are highly visible, and they are targeted by automatic cannons as well. So basically, they open what seems to be aimed fire, but really it's more like shooting by eye, and yet they can't hit it. And that's despite the fact that it's perfectly lit, clearly visible, moving relatively close by, they still can't hit it. It's a total disaster.
And with every new attack on Russian warships, Ukrainian drones are becoming more and more advanced technologically.
Naturally, now they are going to actively target this entire supply chain, simply because the Ukrainians have really committed themselves to this effort. They are succeeding, they see that Russia's air defense system is failing everywhere, so why not give it a try?
Now Putin no longer has a single remote base in the Black Sea where the bunker dweller could hide his fleet from Ukrainian drones. It has just been reported that Ukroboronprom has signed a cooperation agreement with American partners, which gives Ukraine the opportunity to acquire for itself Pontupeniro Wastarsu, a completely new type of drone ekranoplan with a range of almost 5,000 kilometers and a payload of 1 ton.
We have agreed to cooperate within the float and fly concept, and we also plan to jointly develop solutions to increase the speed and stability of our products. We are interested in developing production on the territory of Ukraine as well as organizing training for our weapons specialists.
This news has caused yet another wave of panic in the Kremlin. Now every military vessel and all, without exception, Russian army bases on the Black Sea are in the crosshairs of the Ukrainian armed forces.
We can clearly see that both the sheer quantity and the impressive quality of these advanced drones now effectively allow Ukrainian forces to significantly vary their tactical use and thereby create a certain diverse mix of different types of unmanned aerial vehicles in order to achieve their objectives.
And Ukrainian soldiers, like no one else, know how to achieve their goals by any means possible. It's no coincidence that they are setting global trends in naval operations. Ukraine's naval drones have prompted other countries to adopt similar technologies. Today, our unmanned boats are the main participants in modern exercises conducted by Portugal, in front of representatives of NATO naval forces with the involvement of dozens of defense and technology companies and their experimental weapons. A 3-week battle is being held for control over a notional 10,000 square miles of ocean. As a result of the prolonged battle at sea, Ukrainian drones demonstrated their highest level of effectiveness. Now, according to military experts, the experience gained by the Ukrainian armed forces will be scaled up in the Black Sea.
Ukraine has successfully acquired, and this is indeed confirmed by all recent and unfolding events, a highly effective and potent weapon to decisively counter Russia's long-standing naval monopoly, and in actual fact, has significantly undermined that very monopoly.
If a year ago Ukrainian drones had effectively driven the Russian fleets out of Sevastopol, now they will find no peace even in Novorossiysk. The Kremlin is clearly unable to keep up with Ukraine's new maritime technologies. While Russian sailors are training to shoot at surface targets, Mogura drones, for example, are being equipped with machine guns, anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles. Some of them are even already serving as miniature aircraft carriers, acting as platforms for launching drones.
Such advanced drones can come in various distinct types, and in addition to their individual capabilities, they can be effectively utilized in coordinated swarm tactics to reliably inflict significant damage upon the enemy fleet.
By invading Ukraine in 2014, Putin triggered a whole revolution in naval warfare. Over the past 3 years, Ukraine has completely rewritten the course of such battles, and Western experts are already comparing its contribution to the development of naval forces to technological breakthroughs of their time, such as the construction of submarines or even the advent of steam replacing sails on ships.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The front is blazing. The enemy surges on multiple axes, but their gear is smashed to scrap and their troops are falling apart. Casualty numbers are off the charts. We've driven the occupiers out of Donetsk. Our iron birds delivered a thunderous revenge and the Kremlin's smirk is gone. You have to see this. First details in our full report.
The Russian army is attacking along the entire front line but is making almost no progress anywhere. This is reported by the Institute for the Study of War. The next advance has been planned by the Russian General Staff, particularly in the Kharkiv region. Near Vovchansk, the enemy amassed enough forces for a breakthrough, but lost even before the offensive began. Atesh partisans report that their agent from the 82nd Motorized Rifle Regiment was able to transmit the exact coordinates of Russian artillery positions, armored vehicles, and locations where the occupiers were stationed, which allowed the Ukrainian defense forces to prepare in advance for possible offensive actions and strike back at the enemy. As a result of the effective work of the Ukrainian military, the Russians' plan collapsed before it even began.
Taking advantage of the weather conditions, well, the not so comfortable weather, and for example, the lack of intensity in our drone operations, because the drones simply either won't be able to see or won't be able to take off, the enemy will try to carry out more active assault operations. In fact, this includes the use of mechanized components, which we are already observing today in certain areas of the front.
At the same time, the situation remains tense in the area around the city of Kupiansk. There too, our military is observing an enemy buildup as they repeatedly try to increase their presence in the settlement. However, despite constant attempts to launch new assaults, Russia has made no advances in this direction.
Unfortunately, the enemy has managed to reach the outskirts of the city. You know that fighting continues there in the northwestern and northern parts of the city. The enemy is also trying to infiltrate the central part of Kupiansk with sabotage and reconnaissance groups. The situation is very difficult. The goal is clear: to break out into open operational space and try to advance further through Kharkiv region. The attempt to seize the city, the attempt to take control of Kupiansk as a key hub, is also about logistics. In other words, it's an attempt to cut off our logistics and create unfavorable conditions for those troop groupings that are located, in particular, at this section of the front and in neighboring areas.
The Dobropilia direction is probably the hottest spot on the front today. In the past 24 hours, intense fighting has broken out there for the settlement of Vladimirovka. It is from there that the Russians are trying to break through to their own forces, who remain here encircled.
The landing of paratroopers has become an additional problem, Deep State adds. The Russians brought between 50 and 75 infantrymen into the village. The situation remains difficult. The Russian armed forces will try to take maximum advantage of the worsening weather conditions, analysts warn. Later, the Azov National Guard's First Corps reported that they had nevertheless held on to Vladimirovka.
According to the Corps statement, during the offensive, the Russians deployed 35 units of heavy armored vehicles, including tanks and armored fighting vehicles. As a result of defensive actions, 1 armored recovery vehicle, 3 tanks, and 16 enemy armored fighting vehicles were destroyed or damaged. The Russians also lost 41 motorcycles and 2 light vehicles. Near neighboring Pokrovsk, Russia also decided to amass forces. A group of infantry on motorcycles was sent to break through. The result, 13 motorcyclists lost and no advance made. Another epic video from Donetsk region, Ukrainian drones versus Russian tanks. The Ukrainian armed forces showed how our soldiers destroyed half a dozen enemy tanks and a Grad multiple rocket launcher system. The video was published by the UAV forces of the Ukrainian armed forces. Thus, in the Donetsk direction, operators of the 427th Separate UAV Regiment Rarog halted the enemy's assault actions by knocking out 5 tanks at once, depriving the infantry groups of cover and making further advance impossible, according to the report. In addition, the military delivered an effective strike on a BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system while the enemy was firing at the positions of the Ukrainian army. According to the command, the defense forces have now managed to gain a tactical advantage in this sector. At the same time, our troops are operating not only along the front line, but also in the rear of the Russian grouping. Thus, in occupied Donetsk, a large-scale fire broke out after drone strikes.
Vitaly, this is...
According to reports, the columns of black smoke could be seen from anywhere in the city. It is known that the site of the strike was the former Auchan hypermarket near the bypass road connecting Sloviansk, Donetsk, and Mariupol. However, residents reported online that after the strike they clearly heard further detonations, and the night before, a concentration of military vehicles was seen near the store. It is known that, as a result of the fire, the building's roof collapsed and the premises were completely burned out.
It's still flaring up.
Meanwhile, in Russia, against the backdrop of failures at the front, the pace of mobilization has sharply declined. Recruitment into the ranks of the occupiers has dropped almost threefold, which is already being felt by units at the front, said Ivan Timochka, head of the Council of Reservists of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to him, the Russian Federation is trying to solve this problem in several ways. In particular, they have passed a bill in the first reading that allows for mobilization for compulsory service throughout the year. Timochka says that the Russian Federation may use conscripts, including in the war against Ukraine.
In the last 2 quarters, they have been recruiting by the quarter, not even by the month, about 30 or 35,000. Whereas before they used to recruit that number in a month, and now it takes 3 months. So now, per month, they are recruiting 10 or 12,000.
At the same time, military analysts note that in the Russian information space, they no longer even try to hide the prospects for newly mobilized soldiers, openly stating, on average, after signing a contract, they are expected to live less than 2 weeks.
The mayor of the city of Stryjevoy in the Tomsk region has reached a new level of candor and honestly said that new contract soldiers are needed to replace those who have been killed and wounded. According to the head of the city, on Friday he recruits new people, and on Monday he buries the old ones. War correspondent Romanov gave a more detailed explanation of why people are constantly needed at the front. The lifespan of an assault soldier is 12 days, from signing the contract, training at the range to the actual assault. In the singular, usually there is only one assault.
And this statistic is relentlessly confirmed by the Ukrainian armed forces. According to the General Staff, in the past 24 hours alone, the occupiers have lost more than 1,200 of their soldiers. In total, Russian losses have surpassed 1,122,000 people.
At this moment, that's all from me, Maria Farafonova. Even more hellish frontline news in our new episode. But for now, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon!